The IDF and the United States strikes against Iran's Revolutionary Guards have reached a new peak. The American Secretary of Defense announced to the media, "We are winning, Iran is finished, and we've only just begun. They won't hold out." The IDF struck the central base of the Revolutionary Guards in Tehran with hundreds of soldiers inside it. The Revolutionary Guards are being torn between a change of government and a regional war, and it looks like Iran is at a fateful crossroads. CENTCOM headquarters confirms, for the first time in history in a war against Iran, advanced long-range precision missiles were used that is forbidden to talk about at this moment, and we'll bring you all the details very soon. And United States Secretary of Defense, Iran, it has lost some of its firing capabilities, and we will continue the offensive as long as we need. Launches were identified from inside Iran, and sirens were activated in central Israel in the last few minutes. And today, a report came in that behind the scenes, Iran indirectly approached the CIA to discuss ending the fighting. In addition, it was reported today about a first launch towards a NATO state. Iran bombed Turkey. And we all know that Erdogan, the president of Turkey, isn't a patient man. And today, Donald Trump announced to the media, "Iran tried to assassinate me," and affected the decision to strike. Why this is important? Because eliminating the Revolutionary Guards has become a personal mission for many people all around the world. After what has been seen happening in recent days, it looks like the great Middle East war has begun. Iran's proxy made a dramatic decision. Yes, get ready. The Middle East is coming into the headlines of everybody around the world. And also the Houthis from Yemen are threatening again. If you fire at Iran, we are coming into the picture. And lately, based on how I slept that night, which is not a lot, it looks like Iran's missiles are running out. But according to the Israeli Ministry of Defense, there is an expected end to Iran's missile stockpile. So, I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani. And we are the Boots on the Ground report that brings you everything that's happening in Israel. And this is the Roar of the Lion war that is entering its 5th day. And the Israeli Air Force is striking launchers and regime systems all across Iran. And the IDF is operating in Lebanon to weaken Hezbollah and control the security tension in the area. Khamenei's son was chosen to succeed him as supreme leader, and straight to the CIA, the embarrassing detail that American intelligence revealed about Khamenei's son, who was chosen as the heir. Mujtaba Khamenei, 56 years of age, lost his wife in a strike in which his father was eliminated and was mentioned as a possible candidate for leadership. For now, this is a report coming out only from the Iranian opposition. And today, classified intelligence documents were revealed about him, according to which Khamenei's son, who was chosen to succeed him, Mujtaba Khamenei, was treated for impotence in private hospitals in Britain for years now. Brad Cooper, the commander of the United States Central Command, updated that his forces have already struck 2,000 targets inside Iran, and the air forces of the United States and Israel, the strongest in the world, control the skies. At the moment, 17 Iranian vessels, including a submarine, have been destroyed. This is in addition to everything that's happening. You have an American submarine that sank the largest naval ship of Iran. More than 100 are missing of the Iranian sailors of this ship, and at least 101 people are missing on top of that, and 78 were injured in what appears to be an American attack against Iran's largest naval ship. In the IDF, they point to a drop of more than 50% in missile launches from Iran. It appears that the drone systems and the Israeli fighter aircrafts locate the launchers that are coming out of tunnels in western Iran and strike them within minutes. And in the army, they estimate that fear amongst the crews is affecting the rate of fire towards Israel, While at the beginning of the war, the Israeli army assassinated the top of the Ayatollah regime, in the last day its activity has been aimed, amongst other things, at striking the Iranian commanders that are operating in Lebanon. Since the beginning of the war, about 300 missile launchers have been hit inside Iran. In addition, for the first time in the world, an F-35 brought down a manned fighter aircraft. This is an aerial fight between Israel and Iran, and again, the Israeli pilots are proving their superiority. And this is also the first shutdown in more than 40 years by an air force of an aircraft of this kind. So we are talking about a Yak-130. The Iranian aircraft took off in an area where the Israeli aircraft was present. It was identified and it was shut down. They were probably feeling successful after they attacked the Gulf states, and Pete Hegseth stated that contrary to reports, the United States allies are not running out of interceptors, and that the American military will be able to continue fighting as required. We are hitting the Iranians while they're on the ropes. And General Kane said that the launches have decreased. The balance is changing. Iran's command and control structure is in bad shape. Hegseth confirmed that an American submarine sank an Iranian Navy ship off the coast of Sri Lanka, where at least 80 dead were reported. And in the first 4 days of the war, Iran launched at Israel about 200 missiles and about 100 UAVs, suicide drones. And this is compared to about 500 missiles and 2,000 UAVs at the Arab states. So from its perspective, this is a logical move. The regime has far more medium-range missiles. The suicide aircrafts are hard to intercept there, and it's easier to hit the soft targets in the Gulf with a few dozens kilograms of explosives without expensive missiles that you need to fire towards Israel. It hopes that the economic damage will cause them to pressure Trump to stop. Khamenei's son was chosen to succeed him as supreme leader, and the Revolutionary Guards against the Iranian people, the Revolutionary Guards and their plan against their opponents in Iran is already beginning. Iran is expanding the scope of its attacks against the Gulf states, and in effect has opened a broad regional war. Everyone is asking about the division of labor between Israel and America. So today, we'll put things in order. Israel is leading the hunt for the missiles in western and central Iran. And the Americans, they are responsible, amongst other things, for the naval arena and leading the refueling systems, while behind the scenes, thousands of soldiers and joint coordination cells are operating, synchronizing intelligence and also attack. For the full structure, stay with us for this report, because reports is reaching us that indicate the Israeli and American fighters that are operating on the ground in Iran and apparently carrying out missions that can ignite this imagination of whatever you want to know about this war. And we'll bring all the information that we have about this so far. The American Secretary of State, we are on the way to achieving the objectives of the operation in Iran. And United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio referred to the American operation inside Iran, and he called it fury. He said that we are on the way to achieve the goals of this operation, to destroy their missile launchers and the missile facilities and also their navy, so that they will never be able to hide behind them in order to develop the nuclear weapons. The White House spokeswoman, the rogue Iranian regime has been completely crushed. The White House spokeswoman, Caroline Leavitt, also said in a briefing to the reporters that under the leadership of President Trump, the rogue Iranian terror regime has been completely crushed. 47 years of tolerance and the ability to operate freely by the world's leading state sponsor of state terrorism have come to an end. Iran's murderous terrorist leaders are paying for their crimes against America, and they are paying in blood. It is now being revealed, one day after the start of the strikes, elements in the Iranian intelligence indirectly approached the CIA with a proposal to discuss ending the fighting. In Israel, they asked the United States to ignore the approach, and in Washington, they assessed that the proposal is not serious while the regime in Tehran is in chaos. Want to know what Iran looked like this morning after a wave of Air Force strikes? We'll bring you the full pictures very soon and a look ahead of us. So let's dive into the details because we have a lot to talk about today. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani, and this is your Boots on the Ground, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. And this, again, is the 5th day of the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And 1 second before we start and we dive in with Mati Shoshani into the whole truth, make sure to share our content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time. And if you want to know how Israel looks like behind the scenes, make sure to look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on all the social media platforms. So Mati, after a quiet night, it seems that the fire from Iran is decreasing. Are we getting closer to the end of the war? Why isn't the regime in Iran falling? And what needs to be done to bring it down?
Yeah, you ask a great question. Really, this has been at the back of everyone's mind since probably the second or third day of this ongoing second Iran war. And the question is, what will it take to bring down the Iranian regime, and how long is it going to take? And I think it's a bit confusing because we look at the situation and we see that the Israeli forces, the American forces, I mean, we've dominated the Iranian military forces and airspace since day one, since, minute number 2, 3 of this entire campaign. The airspace has been dominated, the naval space has been dominated, their effect on the global economy has been much lesser than what people were expecting, and yet the regime doesn't fall, and it continues to fight and fight and fight. And really understanding what it's going to take to bring down this regime, it takes a little unpacking. So I'm going to try to make this make sense and be clear enough to really help people understand where we need to go from here. First of all, the Iranian regime isn't like other regimes. It's not a small force that controls a large group of the population. There's a relatively large percentage, I think the number is 10 to 15% of the Iranian economy and people that are one way or another benefiting from the regime. That's IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. That's Basij soldiers or volunteers. That includes companies and the big financial mechanism that is connected to the government. All of them are part of this really big mechanism that doesn't want to go. So the Iranian regime is doing everything it can to survive and to weather this storm. And what that really takes is them not to be fully eliminated and not to be replaced by their people. Now, we've talked about this a lot on the TBN Israel channel and on our podcast. Look, the only way to replace a regime is not by bombs. I mean, you can break a regime with bombs, but you can't replace the regime with bombs. The people need to replace the regime with bombs, and I'm going to, in a few minutes, get to the point of how that's already been in the workings by information that's been leaked in recent days about CIA and possibly Mossad operations. But first, what's actually happening on the ground? How are they still fighting? How are they fighting back? So look, the Iranians are a lot weaker than we were expecting going into this campaign. We're, several days into this already, and their ability to launch missiles is dramatically diminished. I mean, just last night here in Israel, it was a quiet night, not a single missile till early this morning. And the reason for that is because many of the Iranian ballistic missile launchers have been removed. Many of their arsenal of ballistic missiles have been diminished, and the airspace is just saturated with both IDF fighters and U.S. fighter jets. The intelligence, the electronic warfare, it's all hugely dominated. And what they're able to do is just here and there trickle out ballistic missiles to Israel and to several neighboring countries. And we'll get to the neighboring countries part in a few minutes. But first of all, that's really what's happening. Many of their leaders have been removed. Much of their communication has been removed. Much of their financial capability, both in creating financial damage and in making money, has been diminished in a very long and prolonged campaign, one to cut off their shadow fleet of oil, which is related to the Venezuelan campaign, and the Maduro arrest, which is an interesting story that we're probably going to do an explainer on sometime soon. But another aspect of it is they were threatening to shut down the Straits of Hormuz. And they haven't really been able to do that to the degree of what they've been trying to, or what they were hoping for. So again, Iranian government dramatically diminished and weakened in its power. Their ability to launch ballistic missiles at Israel and really paralyze the ongoing day-to-day life here dramatically diminished, but they're not yet removed. They still are strong enough to control the streets. They're still strong enough to control their borders for the most part, and we'll get to that. They're still strong enough to fight back, launch, small missiles at the jets flying overhead, cause disturbances in the sea, etc. They still have that ability. And again, let me put some numbers before you. Iran is a country of about 90 million people. This is not a small nation. And this large nation, just think about the numbers. If you have, 10% of the population that are one way or another involved in the government, that's a lot. That's 9 million people. That's 10 million people. You have hundreds of thousands or several million, depends who you're asking, that are involved in the IRGC and the Iranian army. That is a very substantial force that needs to be removed and eliminated. So we ask the question, what does it take? What will it take? How long will it take to bring down the Iranian regime? And what needs to happen for that to really take place? Now we get to the interesting part. There's a conspiracy side of it, or the, let's call it leaked information side of it, and the practical part. The practical and easy and obvious one is they have to have the people remove the government. Again, to have a different government in Iran, an alternative needs to be presented. The alternative has to be not the Ayatollah regime. How does that happen? That happens with the people coming to the streets and electing or presenting an option. That will happen with demonstrations and riots and them eventually presenting another option. But there's another element. If you have a country that has in it, let's say the lowest estimate, many hundreds of thousands of armed individuals who are related and loyal to the government one way or another, or to a varying degree of loyalty, how do you remove them? You remove them by having someone else remove them from power. And here the story gets interesting. Just yesterday, we heard some information come out. I'm not sure if this is an official leak or an unofficial leak. And yes, that does make sense. Sometimes governments just release information because they want people to know what they're doing. That several of the border crossings into Iran have been breached. And as part of that, the CIA is arming, yes, the CIA is arming some of the Kurdish rebels that previously were part of, let's call it the conflicts in the Middle East in past years. This is connected to Iraq and Turkey and many other things. But they're allowing that those breaches on the border allow weaponry to come into Iran and eventually to form some kind of militia that will be able to fight against the Iranian regime who is currently there. There's one more part here that really makes sense when we talk about the time element. So we talked about the practical side. We need to fight their army, which we have. We need to eliminate their navy. The United States has just sort of completed that in the recent days. Weaken their air defenses. That has been done. Dominate the airspace. Already been done. Now we get to the hard work, to the prolonged work, the government replacing part. And this is why time is really an aspect here and why we need to make sure we have patience and the ability to draw this out. We're almost a week into this campaign. We're coming up on that quickly. We were expecting or hoping for this to be, a quick several-day operation. It doesn't look like it's going to be that. And the reason for that is the Iranians are now playing self-survival. What are they trying to do? They're trying to fire on their neighboring countries and to disrupt trade, to create economic pressure so those countries, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the Saudis, they put pressure on the U.S., stop the campaign. That's one of their hopes. The second one is they're just holding on as well as they can to their seat, to their power, and because they don't want to lose the regime altogether. They're willing to sustain tactical losses. They're willing to sustain losses to their navy, to their aircraft, to the infrastructure, as long as they maintain power. How does that look? They still hold on to the streets to a certain degree, even though we've seen images of resistance on the streets of Iran. But another element is all they need to do is once, twice in a day, launch one ballistic missile, even if it's inaccurate, even if it doesn't make it all the way to its destination, 1, 2 ballistic missiles, so they can show they're resisting Israel so the war continues. And their hope is that they can sort of wait out the American forces, wait out Israel, create enough economic pressure on this region to survive the war. And that's really the balance that we're in right now. We need the people of Iran to stand up against the government. We need to sufficiently weaken that government so the people have a fighting chance to remove them. That includes equipping a militia. It includes bringing cash in for people into that and giving them the resources that they need, intelligence, communication, etc., to really help them fight against the regime. But it also includes systematically removing all the air defenses and all the ballistic missile launching capabilities that the Iranian regime has. And we're getting there. I mean, there isn't a day in Israel where you don't hear the jets flying overhead nonstop. And that's happening simply because we continue to knock out hundreds of targets a day in Iran. We continue to knock out the leadership that is presented to replace Khamenei, to replace the various leaders of the IRGC that keep coming up, to make sure that the people of Iran have the best fighting chance they could to replace the government. And that's really where we stand today. In this drawn-out moment where we're waiting to see, will the people be able to overthrow the government? Will the government collapse or implode? Will they reach a ceasefire agreement where they give the West, the United States, Israel, what we've been asking for? Or does this draw out another week or 2 or 3? Last thought, we always end on prayer. We need to pray for the people of Iran, pray for them to see strength, boldness, and to remove this vile and evil regime. And now back to El Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati. And we will continue to push the truth together. So keep spreading it, share, and follow us. And most importantly, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. You know, if you're watching this, I guess that you love Israel. You care about what's happening here. And right now, with Israel in direct conflict with Iran, things feel very real on the ground for us. Tourism has slowed dramatically. Small family businesses, artisans, shop owners, creators, they are struggling in ways that most people do not see. And that's why we want to share something that we personally recommend. It's called Artza Box. We know the team behind it, we know their heart, and we've seen the real impact that they're making across Israel, especially in times like this. Artza creates beautifully curated seasonal boxes filled with handcrafted products made by Israeli families all across the country. Every box is centered around a biblical location and delivered straight to your home. So when you order, you're not just receiving something beautiful, you are directly blessing Israel. They've just launched their newest seasonal release, which is called the Jordan River Box, the very place where Jesus was baptized. And this box is designed to bring the Holy Land into your home in a tangible, faith-centered way. It helps you and your family connect to the land where Jesus walked, not just in theory, but in experience. And these are limited seasonal boxes. Once they're gone, that's it, they're gone. So if you want to stand with Israel in a real and practical way, especially right now, make sure to go to artzabox.com/TBNIL and use the coupon code TBNIL for an extra 15% off. Again, that's artzabox.com/TBNIL and make sure to use the coupon code TBNIL for an extra 15% off of your subscription. So, be a blessing to Israel today. Now let's continue. Launches were identified from Iran in the past few minutes, and sirens were activated in the central region of Israel. And at the same time, explosions are being heard over Tehran in another wave of strikes. Who's involved? The Israeli Air Force, together with the American forces, that is applying unprecedented pressure from the air and from the sea. And the sharp question now is this: is Iran still able to sustain a pace of fire, or are we already seeing the breaking point? This is a 24-hour period that sums up well the fifth day of the Roar of the Lion operation, war. On the Israeli side, there is a pattern that keeps repeating: hunting launchers, striking command and control, and systematically breaking the mechanisms that keep the regime standing, both under fire and also facing the streets, the Iranian people. On the American side, there is a message coming through loud and clear. They didn't come to help, they came to win. And they are expanding the war in depth and across the region. In Tehran, the Air Force launched this morning a 10th wave of strikes since the start of the campaign in the capital. This is not just another marking of targets. According to reports, this is a wide wave aimed at strategic infrastructure of the regime. I'm talking about power centers, command buildings, and systems that allow the Ayatollahs to hold the city and the country from within. Last night, There were reports of a precise wave of strikes in the capital, directed by the Intelligence Directorate with heavy munitions on the besieged and on the internal security sites. These are not just ordinary bodies. This is the regime's repression mechanism. This is the force that goes out into the streets, carries out arrests, disperses protests, and puts out internal fires. As part of that same aerial operation, it was reported that fighter jets struck dozens of headquarters directly identified with the regime. According to the description, these were nerve centers where they sit, they analyze, they decide, and they carry out actions against the opposition. At the same time, they did not settle for only the repression mechanisms. They also struck the ground forces, supply, and the logistical branches, missile launchers, and air defensive systems. The idea here is very simple. If you paralyze logistics, you leave forces without fuel, without ammunitions, without maneuver capabilities, without the ability to move forces between centers, you isolate the operational level and you make it exposed. And the timing is critical. All of this is happening against the backdrop of political upheaval after the elimination of Khamenei, the supreme leader. The regime is supposed to now produce a unified front, present continuity, show that there is something replacing someone making the decisions. But when besieged headquarters, internal security, and logistical support are taking hits, you make it hard for them to do even the most basic thing, which is maintain internal order. Into this chaos enters the succession story. According to reports coming from Iranian opposition sources, the one chosen to inherit is Mustafa Khamenei, 56 years old. It is also reported that he lost his wife in the strike in which his father was eliminated, and at the same time, embarrassing details were also revealed regarding his ability to produce heirs. Now, we're talking about sensitive medical treatments that he took around the many years in Britain and other places in Europe. So this is information that has not received official confirmation, and it is coming through channels that are hostile to the regime. But the very publication of it during a war is not meant for gossip. It is meant to undermine the legitimacy, break an image, and ignite more fire inside the succession struggle. And not only Tehran, there is also a report about an Israeli move intended to disrupt the selection of the new supreme leader. And according to security sources, Israel struck the building of the Assembly of Experts in the city of Qom, and that body of 88 Shiite clerks that is authorized to choose the supreme leader is gone. According to that report, the strike was carried out during the counting of the votes. This is not a symbolic strike. It is an attempt to hit the moment when the system is trying to produce governmental continuity. Alongside the internal picture in the IDF, they are pointing to a drop of more than 50% in the missile launches from Iran towards Israel. The explanation coming from the field is that the Israeli UAV and the fighter aircraft array is locating launchers coming out of tunnels in western Iran and striking them within minutes. When you close the loop that fast, you change the enemy's behavior. In the military, they also assess that fear amongst the crews is affecting the rate of fire. They understand that they are exposed, that they are being watched, and that every sortie to launch could be their last ticket on this earth. And within this, an unusual detail also comes from the skies. It was reported that an F-35 shot down a manned fighter jet. For the first time in this war, and according to the sources, this is also the first shutdown in more than 40 years by the Air Force against a plane of that type. The aircraft mentioned is a Yak-130, and according to the description, it took off in an area where Israeli aircrafts were present. It was identified, and it was shut down. The operational meaning, Iran tried to get something into the air, maybe to create just a picture of resistance, maybe to try to threaten the strike aircrafts, and it ended up not so good for them. So now we move to the American side, because here there is a jump in the scale. The commander of CENTCOM, Brad Cooper, updated that his forces have already struck about 2,000 targets in Iran, and he added a weighty sentence. The air forces of the United States and Israel control the skies. In military language, that means control, freedom of action, and the ability to strike, and where you want, whenever you want, without the enemy really being able to push you out. But the Americans are not stopping in the air. In the maritime arena, a dramatic picture is emerging. According to reports, 17 Iranian vessels, including a submarine, were destroyed. And in a particularly unusual incident, an American submarine sank a large Iranian Navy ship off the coast of Sri Lanka. The reports speak of dozens that were killed, dozens that were wounded, and at least 100 missing at a certain stage of this report. And later, a number also appeared of at least 80 killed. This is damage not only to the vessel, this is damage to the image, to the capability, and the message of Iran that thinks that it can play at sea or threaten energy routes. It will pay a heavy price there. And there is the dimension of the Strait of Hormuz also that comes in. According to reports, Iran tried to shake up the energy markets, including threats against the shipping route through which about 1/5 of the world's oil supply is passing. This is strategic pressure. This is an attempt to make the world tell America enough. But when at the same time you are losing ships, losing freedom of action, and taking a direct hit at sea, it makes the threat less convincing. At the Pentagon, the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, draws a line. He says, "We are winning. Iran is finished, and we've only just begun." He also claims that interceptor means are not running out, meaning the missiles to intercept the missiles of Iran and the drones are not running out, like some reports have been stating, and that it is possible to continue as long as needed. Alongside this, the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Dan Kane, describes a decline in launches, a shifting balance, and an Iranian command and control structure that is in a very bad shape. He describes a move from long-range strikes to precise strikes, from inside enemy territory, and he emphasizes there is enough precision munitions for the mission ahead of us. And within all of this, there is also a technical headline that very much intrigues the audience. It's very curious for us because CENTCOM confirms that for the first time, long-range precision missiles are used against Iran. It was not stated exactly when the use took place, and full details were not provided, but the very statement is a message. It means there is an ability to strike deep at long ranges with precision and without relying on an aircraft that arrives over the target. And now we put order into the division of labor between Israel and America, because this is one of the most important things for the understanding of the picture. According to reports, behind the scenes there is enormous coordination. Thousands of American soldiers in Israel, coordination cells in Israel and in the United States, briefings in English inside the planning directorate, and synchronization of intelligence and attack. Israel is leading the missile hunt in western and central Iran. The Americans are responsible, amongst other things, for the maritime arena, and they have a clear advantage in refueling dozens of refueling aircrafts. This is critical because without refueling, you cannot maintain a tempo of deep sorties over time. With refueling, you create continuity, and you allow strike aircrafts to be over the area for much longer. And on the ground, there are also hints of another kind of activity. Air Force Commander Tomer Bar wrote to the Air Force personnel that special units and fighters are carrying out in these days extraordinary missions that can ignite the imagination. This is deliberate wording. It does not detail, does not confirm, does not deny, but it sends a message that there are things happening beyond the picture of planes in the skies. And in the same breath, there are also foreign reports about actions by intelligence personnel and special forces on Iranian soil without official Israeli confirmation. At this stage, it is still a layer of fog, but it enters the picture because it aligns with the effort to break command and control from within. Now, we move to the regional arena. Here, Iran is trying to change the game. In the first 4 days of the war, according to cited data, Iran launched at Israel about 200 missiles and about 100 drones, suicide drones. In contrast to the Gulf states and the Arab states, it launched about 500 missiles and about 2,000 suicide drones, UAVs. This is a huge gap, and it is not accidental. The logic presented in this is that Iran has more medium-range munitions at 300 to 600 kilometers. Suicide UAVs are hard to intercept, and against soft targets in the Gulf, like oil facilities, infrastructures, constructions, it is easier to cause significant damage with dozens of kilograms of explosives without wasting heavy and expensive ballistic missiles, like what they need to reach Israel. And the strategic goal is to get the Gulf states to pressure Trump to shorten this war. This is Iran's central pressure lever. This is an attempt to say to the Gulf states, you will pay an economic price if you let the Americans operate from your territory, and if you don't force Washington to stop. The numbers according to the same breakdown: from the UAE, 812 UAVs, suicide drones, and 186 missiles, and from Bahrain, 92 UAVs and 74 missiles. For Qatar, 46 UAVs and 116 missiles. For Kuwait, 384 UAVs and 178 missiles. For Jordan, 36 UAVs and 13 missiles. For Cyprus, 3 UAVs and 2 missiles. For Saudi Arabia, 13 UAVs and 2 cruise missiles. And to other arenas in this region as well, including Iraqi and Kurdistan, this is fire that creates a regional war. And in practice, even if not all countries are willing to admit or state that they are in a war with Iran, they are. And within this expansion comes an unusual event, a launch towards a NATO state, an Iranian missile that was launched towards Turkey. And according to an American report, it was intercepted by an American ship. This is a point that ignites the arena because when Iran hits or tries to hit Turkey, it plays with the nerves of the country whose responses can be fast and sharp. And it also crosses a line from missiles directed at the Gulf to a direct threat to a NATO arena. And at the same time, the proxies return to the area. The Houthis from Yemen are threatening if the Gulf states dare to strike in Iran, they will hit vital infrastructure in their territory. This is a message aimed directly at oil, electricity, ports, and everything that holds the Gulf economy up. Meaning, even if Iran itself is struggling, it wants to ignite another line of fire that will scare the countries of this region from helping the Americans. And now comes the quieter part. Behind the scenes, one day after the start of the strikes, it was reported that elements in Iranian intelligence indirectly approached the CIA through an intelligence body of another country to discuss the conditions for ending the fighting. The report emphasizes, in Israel, they asked the United States to ignore it. In Washington, they assessed that the offer is not serious, amongst other things because of all the chaos in Tehran and the fact that it is not clear who can even commit and carry out an agreement when the system is under fire and the leadership is changing or disappearing at a very fast pace. And within that picture, Trump changes its tone. On one hand, for days he hinted that he was open to negotiations, and on the other hand, he wrote that it is too late for talks. And he also says a sentence that illustrates the depth of the damage. Most of the people we were thinking about are now dead. Soon, we won't recognize anyone. This is a way of saying that the Iranian system is losing continuity, and that even if they want to talk, there is no one to talk to. And then comes the personal component as well, which adds fuel to this war. Trump said in an interview that the Iranian attempt to assassinate him affected the decision to strike. From his perspective, it is not only a strategic target, It is a score to settle, and it changes the way that he presents the war to the public. And what about the question that you raised? Are Iranian missiles running out? Here comes reports that speak of a downward trend in the pace of fire and of an assessment that Iran can continue at the current pace for only a few more days before it will need to slow down or preserve a strategic reserve to carry out potential attacks in the future. In other words, it can still strike, it is still dangerous, but it is beginning to calculate the inventory and it is beginning to choose targets. So this is the picture of the fifth day. Israel is striking in Tehran at command centers and repression mechanisms, closing loops and launchers, and hitting logistics and maneuvering capabilities of the regime. The United States is expanding the war to the sea, bringing in long-range missile capabilities and signaling air superiority on the way to becoming a permanent thing. Iran, on the other hand, is spreading fire at all the Gulf states to create political and also economic pressure, trying to ignite the Houthis and speaking with the CIA behind the scenes, while the succession struggle in Tehran is eroding the center of gravity. And the bottom line is one: if the air and the maritime pressure continues at this pace, and Iran is losing both internal control and the fire capabilities, we are entering a phase in which a regime can crack not only from bombs, but from the chaos that it can no longer manage. And the question now is very sharp. What will happen first? A dangerous Iranian move to break the siege, or an internal collapse that will drag the region into another unexpected arena? We're not well known, but we know that we need to keep spreading the truth. So if you want to help us reach more people around the world, make sure to share this content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And if you want to meet us, to pray for us, make sure to look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms to know what's happening behind the scenes here in Israel, this country. By the way, that's Jerusalem Lights here behind me. And that brings me to the most important point of all of this report. This is a spiritual war. And the only way that I know how to fight a spiritual war is to pray, because God is listening. I've seen miracle after miracle in the last 2 years of this war. Let's unite in prayer for wisdom to our leaders, all of them, your leaders, our leaders, to make the right decisions, because these are very, very critical moments. Let's pray for the United States Navy, the pilots, all the forces that are in this region risking their lives for all of us. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers that again are fighting on multiple fronts, still fighting in the Gaza Strip against Hamas terrorists, still fighting against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And then let's pray for our enemies. That's the hard one. Not to succeed in launching attacks against us, but let's pray for them to have a change of heart, that God will touch them and change the way they feel about Israel, the way they feel about the West, the way they feel about God himself. God can make that happen. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you so much. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Above all, again, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. See you again tomorrow.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.